Yes. Who? Matthew? Do you know what time it is? What? Where are you? But no, hang on a second. I want to get the number. Yes, all right, go on. What? Yes, right. Yeah, put him on. Hello. Yes. Hello, Constable. Yes, that's right. Yes. Now, listen, my client's appeal against the Home Office decision has been submitted. Yes, I assure you, it was definitely sent in. What? Yeah, I know you have your orders, but they will be rescinded the moment I wake up a judge and get him to serve an injunction. Yes, which I will do now. Now, Constable. Yes, now. You just stay where you are, all right? Thank you. Oh, bloody hell.
Who was that?
Your husband.
Christ! I'm not married.
You weren't sure, were you?
You're mixing up your girlfriends, darling. You're not going to one of them now, are you?
No, it's a friend of mine being deported.
What for?
Elephant smuggling.
And why did he do it?
He was lonely.
What?
Oh, go to sleep.
Do you have to go?
Yeah. If I'm not back in half an hour, start without me.
It's blatant discrimination.
It's the law.
It's bloody nonsense.
Possibly.
Why should he be deported just because he's Indian?
He is being deported because his time is up. Matthew, you knew perfectly well when you came here to study that you would have a maximum of 4 years before returning to your own country to do the job you trained for.
The taxpayers keep me at university for 4 years. I graduate, and just when I'm about to be of some use to the community, the establishment throws me out.
If he was English, they'd call it the brain drain. But as an alien, the Home Office are shoving him down it. No one will give him a job until it's definite he can stay.
And I can't stay unless I've got a job.
Yes, I know. Look, it didn't help matters, you being late sending in your appeal.
If he was Italian or French or German, he could stay forever. Just because he's Indian, we stand a good chance of spending the rest of our lives apart.
Right. If you married my sister, no problem. She'd be your responsibility. The state wouldn't bat an eyelid.
Why the difference? There's no sense in it.
Because as far as the establishment is concerned, women are still second-class citizens.
You and my sister could live happily ever after. But Jean marries me and gets deported.
Jean is not being deported.
Oh, no? I have a choice between my husband and a sick father.
How is he?
He won't get better. Just older.
I'll need medical evidence for the appeal.
I'm beginning to think there's no point.
Oh, come on. There's always a point and there's always a chance. All right. What other country would serve a deportation order on you, then let you telephone a barrister in the middle of the night who, in turn, wakes up a judge in order to get an injunction to allow you to stay?
For a few more days?
Every little helps.
Oh, sorry.
No, don't go, Harriet. I'd like you to meet two friends of mine. This is Jean and Matthew Patel. Harriet Peterson.
How do you do?
Jean and I have known each other since I was that high.
Well, James was never that high. He was born 6'1" with a full command of the English language.
Pompous little brat.
Are you referring to me?
I thought he was confessing.
Matthew's helping to teach here.
Yes, provided James wins my appeal to stay.
Then I wish you both luck.
Well, we'd better be going. Jean?
See you at 8 then.
Yes, right, 8 o'clock, don't be late. You know the way, don't you?
Yes, bye-bye.
Fine. Well then, Peterson, what can I do for you?
Ian and I had tea on Sunday with Frank Runce.
Really?
He said he knew you.
Yes, we've met once or twice.
What do you make of him?
Not much.
Why?
Well, can you think of any other father who'd go to all that expense and trouble to put his own daughter behind bars?
Yes, if she stole his £100,000 Modigliani.
Yes, if she did, but as I understand it, the painting belonged to her anyway.
Not according to her father.
Her father is a liar.
And his daughter?
He's a liar too, which is hardly surprising considering the setup.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. What exactly is the setup? If they dislike each other so much, why on earth does the girl go on living there?
Money? Under the terms of her grandfather's will, she doesn't inherit until she is 25 years old, and only then on the condition that she's still living with her father at the time.
I take it her mother had no say in the matter.
Well, Mummy's interests were devoted to the more material side of the divorce settlement. Ronce got hold of the child as a bargaining weapon. As it turned out, his wife, the second, didn't actually waste much time bargaining.
I can't help feeling a bit sorry for the girl.
Don't bother. She learns everything she knows from her father, and he is really something. Do you know he has a dossier compiled on everyone he's interested in?
He said it was all done with mirrors.
You watch him, Harriet. He's a bastard.
He spoke very highly of you, too.
Mr. Patel, at the time of your marriage, did you have any reason to suppose that you only had a short time to remain in this country?
Technically, perhaps. but I had been led to believe that the terms of my residence permit were variable.
Variable on what grounds?
Well, for instance, that I had qualified here as a teacher and wished to offer my services in this country. I had understood that you had a shortage of teachers, especially in London.
So that when you married, you had already assumed there would be no objection to your remaining in this country.
Exactly.
If you had thought that you might be forced to return to India, would you still have asked your wife to marry you?
I was in love with her, of course, but there wouldn't have been much point if we were going to be separated.
Separated?
I couldn't ask her to abandon her father. Also, I knew that Jean had no wish to live in India. For one thing, the heat doesn't agree with her.
But you had discussed the possibility of returning to India?
In general terms, yes. But we had decided that it wasn't what either of us wanted.
No, I wouldn't say you blew it, but heavy sarcasm at the law's expense is not a guarantee of success.
But it was my honest opinion!
All right, well, just remember that honest opinions will be taken down and may be used in evidence against you.
I bet they will.
That man as good as called him a liar.
Shall we win the appeal before we start worrying about his good name?
God, you lawyers are a cynical
Will you
lot.
just give it a rest, Matthew, huh?
What do you think, James? Is there a chance?
Yes, of course there's a chance, Anne. I just wasn't too optimistic about that crack from Roberts. The law is the law is the law.
Make one exception and they'll all be in. Weybridge, teeming with the devils.
Look, it's a question of whether we can make out a better case of hardship than the others they have turned down. Did you get that letter from your doctor, Jean?
Yes.
We're going to need it. Mrs. Patel, how long is it since your mother died?
2.5 years.
And since that time you've cared for your father single-handed?
Yes.
Have you had any help, domestic or financial?
Oh, none at all. My father didn't qualify for an attendance allowance.
Would you mind telling us how you've managed financially?
On what remains of my parents' savings and the money I earn in my spare time as a typist.
But if you'd chosen to complete your course at university, was there anyone else who could have cared for your father?
No, we have no family.
And if you had qualified, you would by now be earning a substantial income.
Yes,
Meanwhile, your father would have become a burden on the state.
if that's how you want to put it.
Mrs. Patel, have you ever spent any length of time in a hot climate?
Never more than a few days.
Why is that?
I can't take the sun, not even in this country. It seems to dehydrate me and leaves me short of breath. And my skin burns very easily. I have to stay in the shade.
So how would you react to a climate such as you'd find in India?
I would suffer a great deal.
And the verdict?
This afternoon, probably yours.
Likewise. You know, if there's any justice, it's not Matthew should be deported, it's Frank Ross.
Why hasn't he been?
He's not married to an English woman?
Not married to anyone at the moment.
No. Still, all he has to do is whistle. His daughter's just the same.
And did you answer her whistle?
Yes, and was carried from the field.
How come?
I got trampled on in the rush. Is Daddy whistling in your direction?
Beginning to puff out his cheeks.
Watch him, Harriet. He's a villain.
Hearsay, Mr. Eliot, hearsay.
For how long has your husband been living with you both?
Since we married.
Does he pay you any rent?
Of course not. He's my husband.
But in view of the financial stress that you've already admitted yourself and your father to be under, do you consider this a reasonable arrangement?
Do I have to answer that question? I don't see that it's anybody else's
The
business.
facts of this case are not disputed. Mr. Patel lives with his wife and father-in-law, but as he's unable to get a job until the question of his residence in this country is settled, he's also obviously unable to make any contribution to the household expenses.
With respect, I am not attempting to pry unduly into Mr. and Mrs. Patel's private affairs. I am merely trying to establish Mrs. Patel's attitude towards marriage in general and the various responsibilities of husbands and wives.
But these matters are secondary to the basic question, which is whether Mr. Patel is to be allowed to remain in this country to earn a living or not.
I rather agree with you, Mr. Eliot. If we could concentrate our attention on that part of the argument.
Of course. Mrs. Patel, you mentioned a while ago that one reason why you do not wish to accompany your husband to India is that the heat would have an adverse effect upon you.
That's right.
In what way would it?
I suffer from heat edema.
Would you tell us what that means?
Swelling of the feet and hands.
Is that to be a medical witness, Mr.
Mrs. Patel's family doctor hoped to be here in order to testify.
So why isn't he?
Well, unfortunately, he's away attending a medical conference. However, I have here his written report on Mrs. Patel's state of health. Would you be so kind? Thank you.
The tribunal is being asked to vary an order of the Home Secretary on the grounds that it interferes with the domestic arrangements of a young married couple. I do not say that lightly, nor do I dismiss out of hand the possibility of some distress to that couple as a result of the law taking the normal course designed for it by Parliament. To every rule there are objections. Occasionally there must be exceptions. The question here is whether or not Mr. and Mrs. Patel's objections to the law constitutes a sufficiently strong case for us to make an exception to the basic rule. It is my submission we would not be justified in doing so.
Mr. Eliot?
Sir, the law, as you have pointed out, is the law and must be obeyed as it stands until it is changed. It is not our task to change the law, but to see that it is administered fairly, tempered with justice and with mercy. It is my submission that in this case the greatest suffering would be borne by Mrs. Patel, for if her husband has to leave this country according to the letter of the law, she will be forced to choose between accompanying him or remaining with her father. She will have to decide which of the two people she most deeply loves she must abandon. I would suggest that in this case we look beyond the letter of the law to its intention, and we ask ourselves, could it conceivably be the intention of this or of any civilized state to allow the tragedy which must follow from a rigid application of the law? I believe it is not. And I look to this tribunal to see that belief vindicated.
I've listened to both sides very carefully. Both Mr. Eliot and Mr. Gore have presented their respective views with clarity and concision. It's never easy to reach a decision which is going to affect the lives of the individuals who find themselves before this tribunal. And in this particular case, which we are considering today, I find it more than usually difficult. I might even say painful. However, I have reached my decision, and I will announce it now. I've been greatly impressed by the arguments put forward by Mr. Eliot as to the hardship that Mr. Patel's return to India would inflict one way and another upon his wife, and I greatly admire the sense of duty which she has shown and continues to show towards her invalid father. In view, therefore, of what I have seen and heard, I have decided to allow this appeal. The parties will receive a written record of my judgment in due course.
Harriet, I thought we might have dinner tonight if you're... Ooh. Aren't you taking money anymore? May I?
I don't think it'll suit you, James.
I wouldn't say that.
And you'll never get it over your head.
Ah, you noticed. Well, I won my appeal. How did you do?
She got 9 months.
Mm-hmm. Was Daddy pleased?
As a matter of fact, he didn't say very much.
No, he just popped that in the post.
Naturally, I'm sending it back.
Well, naturally. I'll send it back for you if you like.
No, thank you, James. I don't want to see it round the neck of one of your girlfriends.
Harriet, what a poor judge of character you are.
So is Mr. Romps.